Welcome to the Cutting Edge Coaching Podcast, where we believe coaches are some of the most important teachers and leaders in the world, and they deserve to be supported. I'm your host, Luke Gromer, and every week we're bringing you conversations with coaches, experts, and leaders from across sports that will give you practical ideas and strategies that you can apply in your coaching to develop high-performing teams and high-character people. Coaches, welcome back to the podcast, or if you're new here, welcome to the show. As we encroach on a big milestone for the show, the 100th episode, I wanted to take an episode here, episode 99, to share 9 learnings on coaching and creating from 99 episodes done to this point. And I'm going to break it down into 2 parts. I'm actually going to share 5 lessons on coaching from the conversations I've been privileged to have with so many amazing coaches, experts, researchers, and leaders from across sports. And I'm going to share 4 lessons on creating, things I've learned in the process of doing this podcast that have been valuable for me personally, but then also professionally in my coaching journey as well. So I'll start with number 1 when it comes to coaching. My first lesson through this journey has been the importance of being prepared for practice and focused with our feedback. I think about conversations that I've had with guys like Trevor Reagan, Doug Lemov, Tyler Costin, Lynn Dunn, Mike McKay, Sefu Bernard. So many nuggets of wisdom around practice planning and the importance of the feedback that we deliver. Additionally, a conversation that I had with Dr. Julie McCleary, she talked about the high percentage of coaching behaviors that is feedback and the importance of us as coaches being good at giving feedback, being effective, giving feedback that actually helps our athletes improve and feedback that actually helps them, and feedback that helps create the culture that we're trying to create as well, because those things are very connected to each other. And when it comes to planning practice, it's just so important that we go into it having an idea of where we want them to get to, the end in mind. And that really leads into number 2, my second learning on coaching through these 99 episodes. And as I've taken these ideas and attempted to apply them in my own coaching, is this: if it doesn't look like the game, it won't transfer to the game. I think about conversations that I had with guys like John Kessel, again, Trevor Reagan, Alex Sarama, Tyler Costin, Laurel Hoyer, all coaches that brought such powerful insight around how we design practice and the importance of our practices looking like the games, putting athletes in situations where they're actually having to do the things that they're going to do in the game so that they'll improve at those skills and it will actually transfer to the game. Too often in coaching, there's been this misconception that what we need to do is we need to take the skill and break it down into isolated parts, and then somehow it'll magically reassemble itself into the entire thing in the game context, and it just doesn't happen that way. It's not how motor learning happens, and that's not how skill is built. It's not even what skill is. And so I think one of my key takeaways has been the importance of asking myself as I'm planning a practice, or even in the middle of practice, is this helping them get better at the game? Is this going to transfer to competition? And one of the biggest keys in this is just to ensure that as much as possible, your practice obviously looks like your game, but in particular for most sports, or particularly for basketball that I coach, that it's offense versus defense, because that's how the game is played. And so that's how we need to practice it. We need to build skills in context. So that was my second learning. If it doesn't look like the game, it won't transfer to the game. My third coaching takeaway or learning from these 99 episodes is that the mental game is a set of skills that must be taught and developed. I think back on conversations I had with people like Dr. Megan Bunning, Dr. Stu Singer, Ben Franklin, Dan Abrahams, some leading sports psychologists who brought such powerful insight and wisdom into how do we as coaches create an environment where this is an essential part of it, but then also practically give our athletes tools to build stronger mindsets. I don't know about you, but I've definitely experienced it, that there are athletes who they have the physical skills, they have the game skills that they need, they have the mental knowledge, technical, tactical, they have what they need, but it's their mindset, it's the mental resilience that they lack, and that prevents them from being at their best. And I think too often as coaches, it's easy for us to just say, man, that kid's just not mentally tough, or they just don't have it. They lack grit, you name it. But what we must do is recognize that mental toughness, resilience, is a set of skills that has to be built, and that we can create an environment that encourages it. And also we can put our athletes in situations where they experience some adversity and they begin to build those muscles of grit and mental resilience. And I think one of the other key learnings for me inside of this has been that if I'm serious about it and I really believe this, then I've got to dedicate time to it. And what that means for a lot of coaches is I need to shorten my practice 15 minutes, and we need to have a lesson on mental resilience, something to do with it. Maybe it's in a classroom. Maybe it's watching an example from a sport that you can discuss as a team that shows mental toughness or mental resilience. You got to talk about it. They've got to understand what it is. You've got to show them examples of it. Show them non-examples of it. Have discussions about it. You got to make them aware of it. And then within that, with those athletes where it is something that is potentially holding them back, I believe it's critical that you have the individual one-on-one meetings and conversations with those athletes about it. Oftentimes, they are surprisingly self-aware and they recognize that it's an issue for them. And so it's powerful for us as coaches to have those honest conversations with them about it with them, and to ask them, which I had to do multiple times this past season, when this happens, when your emotions get riled up and you're no longer at your best, how can I help? What do you need from me to help you calm down, to get back into a better place, to where you can be at your best in practice or in our game? Right? That's helping them develop mental resilience, mental toughness, having those conversations, teaching them some of the skills that they need to combat those high levels of stress that they often experience in the sport. And again, so many of those guests I mentioned have talked about specific skills around it. One of the ones that's most important is just that we teach them how to actually do deep breathing that gets blood back to their brain so they can begin to think clearly again. Right? Or we talk about other ways that you can calm yourself down when those emotions get heightened. And ask them too, because they know themselves. They can probably provide insight into what will help them calm down. For a couple of my guys, they just need to walk for a minute. And I tell them, all right, you let me know when you're good again. Sometimes that's what we have to do. And that's important. And those mental skills, they've got to be something that we prioritize, that we spend time on, we put energy into, recognizing that those skills need to be developed and grown alongside the physical skills that they need for the game to succeed. My fourth learning on coaching from these 99 episodes is this. It's about the people, and it always will be. I think about one of the coolest conversations I got to have, because in many ways, this guy was the white buffalo on my list, the person from the beginning of this journey that I really wanted to talk to because of the tremendous impact his book had on me. And that was Joe Ehrman. And getting to talk to Joe about transformational coaching and his journey and how as coaches we can be transformational leaders was just so incredibly powerful. And to hear the way he talks about coaching and his philosophies on it, and the importance of empathy and relationships and loving the players that we coach, so powerful. And it just reminded me of that truth as I was thinking about these episodes and these conversations we've got to have. We can't forget that we are coaching people. John Kessel, episode 5, I believe, incredibly powerful quote, or he uses the example of what he'll often do in coach trainings where he holds up a volleyball and asks someone to coach the volleyball, and everyone's kind of confused. And he says, yeah, because you don't coach volleyball, you coach people. And it's so cliche, but it's so true and so powerful that we're coaching people. We've got to recognize the person first. Often as coaches, we get so laser focused on our team and improvement and the performance and practices or games, and we neglect to remember and realize there's a person in front of me. They come as an entire person with their hurts, their habits, their hangups, the good things, the bad things going on in their life. And we've got to be willing to engage with that person if we're really there to impact their life positively, and even practically if we want to help them be at their best. Because I think we could all say as coaches, but then knowing athletes as well, that oftentimes there are personal things that prevent us from being at our best. And I don't think it's fair to say to anyone, hey, you've got to leave everything else in your life off this court or out of this team. That's just not allowing people to show up as their whole selves. And the fifth lesson from these 99 episodes on coaching is to expect it to be hard. I think about some very honest and vulnerable conversations with Nate Sanderson or Matt Spear about how difficult coaching can be at times, what it's like to be fired, what it's like to experience depression or anxiety during your season, or just because of other life circumstances. And I think it's important for us to recognize that coaching is difficult. And in part because of what we just talked about on number 4, that it's a people business. And people are often messy, and relationships are very difficult. Sometimes we have to go apologize. Sometimes situations come up that nobody wants to deal with, but we have to because we're the leader of this group. And I think that as coaches, it's critical for us to just remember and know that going into it. It is so fun. It is so awesome getting to coach. And it's going to be hard. And it's normal when it's hard. And that's part of what makes it special and rewarding too, is that it is hard. There's challenge in it. And the last thing I would say there, and this has come up in other conversations through these 99 episodes as well, is it's so important to have people or a person that you can go to and be honest and vulnerable about what's going on when it's hard. Whether that's a coaching mentor, a friend, your spouse. I think it's particularly powerful when you can go talk to someone who's walked in those coaching shoes as well. But to be able to go to someone and say, man, this is hard. This is what's going on. To seek wisdom or just to have someone to talk to about it, I think is so important to our health and longevity as coaches as well. So those were my 5 coaching learnings from these 99 episodes. Number 1, be prepared for practice and focused with your feedback. Number 2, if it doesn't look like the game, it won't transfer to the game. Number 3, the mental game is a set of skills that must be taught and developed. Number 4, it's about people, and it always will be. And number 5, expect it to be hard. Those have been really powerful learnings for me through these first 99 episodes. I'm excited to learn another 5 or more lessons in the next 99 episodes. And now I want to give you 4 lessons so that we get to that 9, 4 more lessons that I've learned from creating, from doing this podcast, having these conversations with coaches, experts, and leaders from across sports for the last few years of my life. And if you want more context for how this all came about, you can check out the trailer for the podcast. That'll give you a little more context. But my first lesson on creating is this. It just takes one moment of courage to get over your fear. And here's what I mean by that. It was quite scary for me to have that first interview with a guest. It was especially scary to publish that first podcast episode. It was pretty scary to send out that first email to an email list, or to send out an email trying to sell a cohort or a book club. Those were moments where I was nervous. I was a little bit afraid of what people might think, afraid of what the response might be. Because when you create, when you put something out there, you're exposing yourself to others. You're putting it out there for others to, to judge, to experience. And so you've got to be okay with that. But what I learned was that one moment of courage of, I'm doing it. I'm hitting publish. I'm putting this out there, or I'm sending this. After you do that, it just becomes a lot less scary. The first few episodes of the podcast I put out, I was terrified to hit publish. And then as I continued to do it, it became less and less scary. And now I don't have any issue hitting publish on it. And I'm less concerned with what people might say or think, because I believe in it and I enjoy it. And again, fear is real, and often it just takes one moment of courage to overcome it. And it's important that we take that action to overcome our fears. And again, these are lessons that have served me, not only in creating and podcasting, but also just in life, remembering these lessons as well. The next lesson on creating is actually a quote from a book I've been reading recently, The Power of Moments by Chip and Dan Heath. I would highly recommend it. The quote is this: action leads to insight more often than insight leads to action. I'll read it one more time. Action leads to insight more often than insight leads to action. And here's my takeaway, or the lesson I learned. Start doing it. Just start doing it. Try, fail, reflect, adjust, and repeat. I cringe when I go back and listen to some of the first episodes that I put out. I wasn't very good at doing it yet, and I still have room to get better at it. But that action has led to so much insight, much more than looking for insight would actually have led me to take action. It's so important that we just start moving. And I think this has huge applications to our coaching as well, right? Take action, apply a new idea, try it. It's okay if it flops. Reflect, adjust, and move on from it. Learn and grow. Action leads to insight more often than insight leads to action. So that thing that you've been putting off that you want to do, start doing it. And I've seen a lot of things around motivation as well. A guest I had on the podcast, Steve Magnus, talks about it extensively in blogs, on his Twitter, is that motivation follows action as well. That when we start taking action towards something, that motivation follows. Most people think, oh, when I'm motivated, then I'll do. Well, in fact, the best thing to do is to do first, and then that motivation will come. And I think it's the same with the insight as well. So I'll leave you again with that quote before I go on to the next lesson. Action leads to insight more often than insight leads to action. And the third lesson on creating is that people are really generous. I am so grateful for the time that so many people have given me for free to talk to them about a topic that we're both passionate about. I was fortunate that I began this journey while COVID was still a significant influence on the world. And so I was blessed to be able to have access to some people who had more time in their schedule, and I had more time in their schedule. And as I reached out to people, they kept saying, yes, I'd love to talk to you. And spending an hour with me talking about this topic, sharing it with their audience, sharing it with other people, just being generous and being team players, people that care about coaching, care about youth development, care about sport, and wanting to see it used for good and changed positively. And I'm really, really grateful for the generosity of people. And it just taught me the importance of being willing to ask. The worst thing that I was told was no. And honestly, not very many times. The vast majority of people I asked to have conversations with me said yes. Because people are really generous with their time. And people are generous when it comes to things that they believe in and care about. And so I would encourage you, right? Ask people to help if there's something you're passionate about that you're trying to change or accomplish. And the last lesson on creating that I have learned from these 99 episodes is an idea that comes from James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. Habits cast votes for our identity. The daily, weekly actions that we take become, in so many ways, who we are. The little actions that we do every day, those are the things over time that compound into who we become. And it's important for us to remember that in whatever we do, and to look at, hey, where is the current trajectory that I'm headed based off my current habits? Where am I going in the future based off what I'm doing now? And then to ask ourselves, what would a blank do? What would a great father do? What would a great coach do? What would a podcaster do? What would a creator, to ask ourselves, what are the behaviors and actions of the person I want to become? Because the habits we have cast votes for our identity. I became a podcaster, quote unquote, only because I started making podcasts and it became a habit. I've done it every week for almost 2 years. And so it's become part of who I am. And every week where I sat down at a computer to record a conversation or to edit audio or to upload audio or to take notes on an episode, it just began to continue to cast votes for that identity. Hey, this is something I do. I'm a podcaster. This is something I do. I serve coaches, right? And so those daily habits and actions just cast votes for identity. And it's important for us to ask ourselves, who do we want to become? I think it's a powerful question to ask ourselves and to ask our athletes. And then to honestly reflect and be very honest about, do my current habits line up with my future aspirations? It's such a powerful thing for us to consider in all walks of our life: coaching, family, relationships, you name it. That's a really powerful thing for us to do. So those were my 4 lessons on creating from these 99 episodes. 1 moment of courage can get you over the fear. Action leads to insight more often than insight leads to action. People are really generous, and habits cast votes for your identity. So those were 9 lessons on 99 episodes from this podcast. But before I leave you, I actually want to leave you with a bonus, a 10th learning from this journey of 99 episodes. And that bonus lesson is this: there is tremendous power in a handwritten note. There is tremendous power in a handwritten note. One of the things I was intentional about throughout this journey was sending handwritten thank you notes to guests and or coaches that were on the podcast or involved in the things I was doing. And there's tremendous power in that. It shows intentionality. It shows care. Yeah, it took a little bit of effort and time, but it strengthened the relationships and the connections that I had with these people. And also, it's really powerful to express gratitude. So powerful to take a minute to tell people why you appreciate them and to let them know that. Because often, if you're like me, I miss opportunities to do that. So I think it's really powerful and important to take the time to write the note, to mail it to them, give it to them, whatever it is, to express your appreciation and gratitude to the people who have helped you, to the people who have allowed you to do what you're doing or to become who you are. It's so worth the time for them and for you to write that note and give it to them. Well, that does it for this reflection on 99 podcast episodes. Those were 9 learnings plus 1 from 99 episodes that I have had the privilege of recording with some incredible guests. Coaches, I appreciate you taking the time to listen. I hope you found some value in these reflections and learnings. And I am really excited to bring you a special 100th episode next week. It's going to be a special one, unique, different than the rest of the episodes that I've done to this point, but I'm really looking forward to it. And I know you will find the insight of the guests extremely valuable. So that does it for me, and I will see you guys next week. Thanks for listening to the podcast.